String functions are some tools that most computer programs have. I've found them in every one that I've used that allow you to strip pieces of a string. And that typically means a text field. And you can tell it how much of a string you want to take and where to start, where to stop, things like that. We're going to look at some data that at first blush, you might think we could use text to columns, which allows you to split columns based on a delimiter, but this one does not work. So we need string functions to do it. So these are some codes that the Minnesota Department of Education uses for spending. And there's a finance code, a program code, and an object code, and they're all tucked together in one column with these dashes in between. You'll see some of them only have a finance code, which is fine, but we want I want these three in separate fields. The problem is, so we're going to make some new fields over here. The problem is that if we were to use text to columns for this, it would lose those zeros, and it would treat them as numbers, and we'd lose like the leading zeros here, and we wouldn't have a code anymore, we'd have a number, which is not what we want. But the string functions allow us to keep those zeros and keep them intact. So let's look at string functions. There's three main string functions, left, mid, and right, and then there's also a search function, which is super useful when you're dealing with string functions. So the way these work is the left function automatically says start on the very left side of a cell, and then you tell it how many bytes to take in that cell. The right one works basically the same way, only it starts on the right side of the cell and you tell it how many bytes to take. If you need to find something that's somewhere in the middle, that starts somewhere in the middle, you would use mid, and you would tell it where to start and how many bytes to take. The search allows you to say, go find something like a comma or a dash or some other thing that is consistent in your column, and then you could use this as the, for example, you could use this as the place to start in the mid. You could drop that right into the spot for the start and tell it start when you find the comma. We're not going to use that in this video, but we will in the next one. But it is a useful thing to do. This example we have is very clean cut because all of our columns are either these three-digit ones, or they have there's like 5 dashes in there. You have to look real close to count them. Otherwise it's really consistent, so we know exactly where to start. So for the finance code, we want the first 3 digits in the cell. So the easy thing here is to say equals left A6, the cell, and then the number of characters or the number of bytes to take, and that would be 3. And we copy this down. Should give us what we want, yay. Mostly it's 0 up here at the top. Now the program code is the trickier one because it's in the middle. So we need to see how many bytes are in there. So we know we have the first 3 for the finance code, and then there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dashes in there, and we want to start on the 6th byte. So we're going to say mid A6 comma start at byte 6, and then take 3 bytes because we want 3 things. Now this first one isn't going to give us anything because there's nothing there. Uh-oh, we did something wrong. So we miscounted the number of dashes in there. You can see that I got 3 dashes, so gosh, I must have shortened, miscounted. Instead of 6, it's probably 9. Let's try 9. There we go, 0, 1, 0. And you'd want to go down and check, and yep, it switches to 0, 2, 0, 0, 3, 0. And of course you want to make sure it goes all the way down. So again, that one's a little trickier because you have to tell it which byte to start on, and then the last number is the number of bytes to take. So those are two different things you have to kind of remember. So now object, we on first blush you would think we could do this. do a right and say take the first 3 digits on the right. But look what happens on these first 2. Should we do that? Probably not, because that is not an object code, and I don't want that in my object code. That's a finance code. It's not intended to be there. So right is not the solution here. So we're going to have to again go with mid and go, we want to work on cell A6, and this time we want to go to 16. 16 and then take 3 bytes again. Let's see if this works. There we go, 110. Another useful thing that you may want to do with all of these when you're doing string functions is what's called the trim function. And this will trim leading and trailing spaces in case you grabbed a stray space somewhere. It'll just clean that up. And sometimes it's really hard to see, especially trailing spaces. Leading spaces usually show up a lot, but sometimes I throw that trim on there just as a safety precaution when I'm cleaning up data like this.